Welcome, everyone, to this workshop for Flex. This is Humanize, the first week of an online class. I'm Greg Beyer, your distance education coordinator, and I'm grateful to each of you for choosing to spend some of your valuable Flex time in this session. I have a quick comment. This was related to something I heard earlier today during the Coffee with the Presidents when they did not serve coffee. Not that I'm complaining, that the issue of fraudulent enrollments is something that we have. Of course, this is a statewide issue. And one of the things that we can do to combat the fraudulent enrollments is to do the very things that I'll be talking about in today's workshop. This is connecting with students. So if they are real people behind those usernames and logins, we will be able to connect with them and hopefully make sure that they are real. As we go through this, please don't hesitate to put any questions or comments that you have in chat, and I will break here and there to take a look at those. And there will also be some time, right, for us to ask questions in general. So I will go ahead and get started. And I will say, imagine you can see your speaker notes. There we go. I'm going to ask you to be interactive here to make sure that none of you are fraudulent. If you would put a 1 in the chat if your first undergraduate class, so your first undergraduate class was fully online. Did anyone have that experience? A fully online first undergraduate class? Oh, Eric. Okay. Thank you. Brandy too. Thank you. Okay. For sharing that. So looks like a few of us did have that experience. Now think of our students today here at CRC. This is likely their first college, and their first college class might be your online class. So think of that for a moment and then switch gears and try to remember what some of these firsts were like in your undergraduate experience. Again, and this especially for those of you like me who all of my undergraduate classes were in person. How did your professors first contact you? It may have been when they first started speaking on that first day of class. And if you can, remember what was their demeanor? What did they say? What did your classrooms look like when you first entered? What was displayed on the chalkboard or whiteboard or projection screen? What was on the walls, if anything? What was the first information they got from you? Was it perhaps your name when they called roll? Or maybe it was not, until you submitted a first assignment. And what was the first information that you exchanged with your classmates? Maybe you talked with people before class. If you didn't know anyone, you met some people. Was there an introduction activity during class? So these are questions that you might have taken for granted as a professor in your in-person classes. But for our online classes, these are each opportunities for us to make a first impression
Hi.
and start the semester in a
I'm
way
just in a
that supports
Zoom
our
meeting.
students.
Okay. I'll call you back. Oh,
And I decided to mute everyone just in case we have any extra comments. So go ahead and please use the chat for your questions or comments as we go through. And I just got a request from someone here to make a co-host. Thank you very much. So again, these are questions you might have taken for granted as a professor, but for online classes, as an undergrad, excuse me, but in our online classes, each opportunity is for us to make a first impression. And today we're going to talk about how to do each of these things in an online class. And I'm going to show you how I've done these in my online history classes. I teach history, and I've been doing it exclusively online now, or I should say almost exclusively online now for several years. And my history classes are also almost exclusively asynchronous. So I'm going to switch to the next slide. Oh, I've got a Zoom poll. So I'm going to ask you two questions basically. When and how do you first contact your online students?
How do you want us to respond?
You should see it on the screen now. Oh, Oh, does this say first student-student interaction? I'm sorry. I got the wrong poll. Okay. We'll come back to that. Let me try that again. Polls, first contact. There we go. So you should see it on the screen right now, a poll asking you your first contact. Two questions. When do you first contact students in your, this is again, thinking of your online classes. That's got a multiple choice. And then a second question is, how do you first contact students? And thank you, Brandy, for sharing in the chat. Email through Socrates. All right, let's see if we can get one more response. I've got, so perfect, 21 out of 25. Here we go. So let me end the poll and I'm going to share results. So you should all see the results there. And I'll go ahead and read through those. In terms of when, 2/3 of the respondents said before the semester begins, 30% of you said the Saturday the semester begins, and then 4%, that's 1 out of 27 respondents, said the first business day of the semester. And I'm really glad to say that no one responded, I assume students know to check Canvas. So you're already awesome on this with this answer. And then how do you first contact? I'm going to select the view details. I think this will show. Yes, it does, because it should be on my share screen. Oh, they did a word cloud automatically. Email was the biggest, most frequent response. And then I see announcement as well. So thank you for sharing that and for kind of going through that and for helping me gain experience doing Zoom polls. I'll stop sharing and minimize that for now. All right. So when and how do you first contact online students? Here are a couple of options that we have for online classes. These are the easiest options, is either to use email. That was something that a lot of you said that you do, or to post an announcement in Canvas. Through Socrates, which is our online grades and roster system, we can send a bulk email to our students. It will come from our email address. It will go to their Los Rios Google address. And if they have added another email address to the Los Rios Google, which they have instructions on how to do that, it will also go to them. I personally actually will do an announcement instead. And the reason that I do this is I like to have all of my communications with my students contained within my Canvas courses. I don't like to have to rely on multiple channels to keep track of my students. I've got enough bright stuff going on with them. And of course, I've got enough Los Rios emails separate from my students. And again, keeping it within Canvas means I can always access it, right? As long as we have Canvas. And another thing that's nice about Canvas, instead of using email, is that the end user in Canvas, so that's our students, that's also us, we can choose how we receive, what method we receive notifications from Canvas, which email address that we get there. And that's kind of built into Canvas. And also, if I send a message to a student in Canvas, or if I post an announcement, I know that that's also there, so that if a student, say, misses it for whatever reason, I can always resend them. Thanks, Kurt, for sharing. I duplicate the email welcome as an announcement on Canvas in case they don't see the email. Perfect. That works as well. The reason I don't use emails, again, I'm going to encourage my students, and I tell them actually use Canvas to contact me if you have messages. I find that for me is a little bit easier. So I'm going to show you what my announcement has here, because that's a link, and I should have that open. So this is an announcement that I sent to one of my summer classes. And you can see here it's got some information. There's also a video embedded. And I'm going to stop and reshare because I did not check the box to include audio with my sharing. Share sound. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So here's what I'll say, a couple of tips for using announcements as a first way to contact students. And then I'll come back to the content. Number one is that anytime an instructor posts announcement in a course, by default, that announcement is emails to everyone who's enrolled in the course. So every student in the course will get an email of an announcement that I post. It's possible that students might not get an email, but if that's true, that means they have gone into Canvas and they have chosen to turn off their email notification for announcements. And as an instructor, I assume that if students have done that, then they are competent, they're capable of managing their communication preferences, their notification preferences from Canvas. And so therefore, I like to trust that Canvas announcements will work. So that's a thing to be aware of. It automatically gets, or I should say by default, gets emailed to them. What's also true is that students do not receive announcements until or they can't receive those announcement notifications if the course is unpublished. So what I do is I publish my course, and then after that, I have my announcement scheduled to to post, and that way I know that my students will get the notification, right? Because the course is published, and then kind of a corollary to that, or a consequence of that, is that any student who enrolls in the course after I send that initial announcement, they won't get a notification. There are no retroactive notifications of announcements that were posted for users that enroll after a course or after an announcement has been published. So for those cases where I have students who are enrolling my course late, right, when I give those permission numbers for students who drop or for students that I drop, then I will send a message to those students and reminding them, hey, check out this announcement. It's linked from the course homepage, wherever, however it's linked, and you'll be able to get this important information. So in terms of the contents that I put for my announcements, what I like to do is, and I think Rubina, I think I just answered that question about Canvas announcements, right? They won't be emailed to students, but they also won't be emailed to students if you publish, you create the announcement and then publish your course. The course has to be published first before the announcements are emailed. So that's an important distinction in time. There's a if-then statement that is not true in the other direction. So in terms of the content that I put in my announcements, I've got a text-based welcome message. I remind them for this opening announcement. These are the things that they have to do in order to retain their enrollments in the class. Students, right? We drop students if they don't show up on day one of our in-person classes. And a good question for each of us to think about is what's the equivalent for showing up in a fully online class? It's important that students do a thing inside the course. So what I do, and you'll see examples today, is I have an introductions discussion and I have a pre-course survey. So I get some information from my students. Both of these things, I require them to get done. And if they don't do it by that deadline, then I drop them from the class. It's just like they didn't show up to the class. I think that's a great way to catch fraudulent enrollments, because if any of those students, right, if those are not real people, then of course they're not going to do the work, and then they'll get dropped. And for me, the deadline that I set it on Tuesday. So this upcoming Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, that is the deadline. And when I wake up Wednesday morning, one of the first things I'll do is go into my course, and any student who hasn't done both of these things, I will drop them. And then I'll contact the students on the wait list and say, hey, a couple of spots have opened up. Right, here's a permission number for you. So that's kind of the content. And then I also, hopefully you see the screen here, I've got a video, and I'm going to share with you the video that I have. This is again for my summer class. And this is part of humanizing me for my students, right? So the first information they get is going to be an email that has the content of an announcement. A good thing to note is that the video embed does not come as part of the email. So that's why my text says the embedded video has a welcome message from me. And let me go ahead and share this, and we'll watch the video, Kurt, and then I'll answer your question. Funny how I press the play button and then it doesn't play. Let's refresh that page. And I can't hear any sound, which means, really? There we go. So I've got it muted. We've got some important activities. Here we go. Hello, and let me give you an official welcome to History 310 this summer. Today is our official course start date, and this week we've got some important activities going on that I want to let you know about. Most importantly, by Tuesday, there are two activities that you must complete in order to retain your enrollment in the class. One is to participate in the identity introduction, and the second is to complete a pre-course survey. The identity introduction is part of the formation of a learning community within this class. So you'll get to know a lot more about me, and and your classmates will get to know whatever you choose to share about you. The pre-course survey is a chance for me to get to know a little bit more about you, as again we are building this class together. Also this week, we will begin our practice as historians by looking at primary sources. We're going to talk about generative AI and the connections between generative AI and history. And you'll also get a chance to practice the types of assignments that we will be doing in this class. That includes a self-assessment, which that generative AI assignment will actually ask you to do. Again, this is an asynchronous class, so we won't ever be on time by schedule at the same time. However, I am very willing to meet with you one-on-one if you need help completing questions, completing assignments, or if you have any questions. So don't hesitate to contact me at any time. Again, I'm looking forward to a great class with you. I'm looking forward to getting started, and let's have a great week. So I hope that you saw with that, right? I've got some student-friendly language. I hope that my affect is friendly and welcoming so that my students feel like this will be a good class, right, that they want to enroll in. And I also told them, very importantly, you've got to do these things by this certain date if you want to retain your enrollment. And then I mentioned, of course, the other things that we'll do during the class. My goal with this is that on day one or even before day one, right, as class is starting, my students feel like they've made a connection with me, and that they're also getting some helpful information that will help them get started in the class. Let me respond to Kurt's question, and then I got a private chat as well. How do I know if they don't complete the assignment because they were busy or procrastinated? I trust that my students care enough about their education that they will respond to that email announcement and they will log in. I assume that they know that the semester is starting. So if a student hasn't logged in at all, they get dropped, period. I don't worry about that because I know there are students on my wait list who want to take the class. What is true for me is I do run into the situation occasionally where a student has done one of these two things, right? They've done the introduction, but not the pre-course survey, or perhaps they've logged in and there are a couple of other mini assignments, like I've got an academic integrity quiz that's part of this. And the way I have Canvas set up is they have to complete that right before they get to the introduction discussion. So they've done a little bit of activity. I might contact those students and I might say, in fact, what I'll usually do actually is on Tuesday morning, right? Tuesday evening is is the cutoff date. Is Tuesday morning, I will look at my students and I will send a reminder to those individuals who haven't yet submitted, again, these two crucial things, the pre-course survey and the introductions discussion, to say, hey, don't forget that by midnight, by 11:59 p.m. Pacific time tonight, you've got to have these things done. So if they're getting two messages from me, right, that announcements, they're also getting that follow-up message if they haven't done it yet. My hope is that they will, that they'll get it, they'll respond, and then they'll participate. And then a question I got in a direct message was, what software do I use to record the videos? I use Camtasia software. It's not free. There is a licensing cost for it. And I also have a subscription to a website called Soundstripe that gives me music. And so that music that you heard, I'm pretty sure that was a Soundstripe track. And then Camtasia is what I used for, putting the lower thirds that you saw, right, with the names and stuff. And then, I've got a webcam. So to do that in terms of the hardware, I've got some other stuff for that. Don't hesitate to contact me if you want to know. I'm happy to share, of course, the details of my setup. And I've got a couple other questions. So let's see what I can answer there. So the pre-course survey, you're going to see that because that's part of my presentation today. Is this the only video you make during week one? Great question, Anna. Yes, what I do in my classes is I give them a course is starting soon video, because I typically publish my course Thursday or Friday night before the official start of the semester on Saturday. And that Thursday video will say, basically, it's a similar video. It doesn't have the details. I'll say, hey, I'm Professor Beyer. I'm excited about being your professor. Class officially starts Saturday, but our Canvas course is open right now if you want to go in and read the syllabus, get a look at what we're going to be covering this semester. And so I kind of, hopefully a similar energy, right? I'm excited for them to be starting the learning journey with me. And so that's this. They kind of get two videos in a couple of days. After this, I do one video per week, and I have it scheduled so that it's every, I think I do it every Monday morning. It'll be a video, and it's just like you see here, it's a talking head. If I film all those videos at the same day, I am careful to change the shirt I'm wearing so that it looks like I fill those on different days. But I'll say basically, this is what we're doing this week, right? These are the assignments that are due this week to kind of give them a preview of the upcoming week. I'll also comment a little bit about the content, right? We're starting module 2, and this is what we're covering in this module. And then a second thing I'll do, so I'll kind of give you a little bit of detail here. My content modules are 2 weeks long. So it's the chapters of the textbook and the lectures over 2 weeks. There's all the assignments and activities that are part of that. And so I have 2 weekly videos to give. In the first video, I'll say, hey, in this week, we are beginning chapter 3. And in chapter 3, we're going to study this and that, and you'll learn about this and that. And then in the second video for that content, I've already introduced the topic. Depending on the semester, I've done different things. I might highlight historians that have been important to me. This gives me a chance to present other faces to my students, right? The other types of people who do history besides their professor. I might talk about student services and mention a service and how I used it when I was a student, or maybe I didn't use it when I was a student, and kind of mention, hey, we have this service here at CRC to help you. So I like to kind of bring in additional topics for these weekly videos. But it's very important, I think, that for our online classes, we do have a weekly video. Even if all of our lectures are, just us, right, recordings of us doing the lectures, the weekly videos like this one here are not directly tied to what they're learning, right? It's just a chance to make a connection that's outside of the things that we're learning. Kurt, you said, do you consider creating a weekly video? I think I must do. Yes, I think it's a must do. I think it is a great way to establish a connection with students. Um, okay, Matthew, you mentioned using OBS. Yeah, OBS is a software. You could record videos using Zoom. And in fact, Canvas also has a built-in screen recorder that includes the webcam for the talking head video like you see here. I just happened to have a Camtasia license because I had been doing that from before we got Studio. Okay. All right, great questions. Let's see. Let me go to, back to my presentation. Okay, so that's the first contact the email announcement. First visit to the classroom. So what's on the screen here is a screenshot of my course homepage. This is on a mobile device, so you can see what it looks like on a mobile device. And from a student's perspective, what's an important thing to remember is the online classroom exists 24 hours a day. It is always open for them to see that. Oh, I got a message, you can't see it. Can you see the screen that says first visits to the classroom?
I can see it. Yeah.
You can? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, perfect. Thanks for letting me know. It'll definitely be on the recording, Rubina, if you're not able to see it now. So the classroom itself is available 24 hours a day. And of course, we are not there 24 hours a day. In our in-person classes, right, they come to class however many hours per week. So it's important that our classroom be a welcoming space for them. And the course homepage is a great place to establish that. Their first visit to the classroom will likely be that homepage. And so what I like to do, and I'll kind of talk through what you see on the screen there, is, of course, I've got a welcome language, right? The same, hey, welcome. I'm excited you are in this class. I like to tell my students what the links on course navigation will do. So I have in my the screenshot here, I talk about announcements, I talk about syllabus, I talk about grades. I mentioned briefly how the course is organized. I use modules to organize how my students will kind of progress through the material. That's really important for a fully online class, that it's well organized, and modules is the best organization tool inside Canvas. I've got a link there that says ready to begin, start with a module 0 overview. So that's kind of the beginning of my page. What you can't see here is is a list of links to modules and the release date for the modules. So my students will know from the homepage when stuff will be available. I also have information on how to get help. What I don't put on my course homepage, but I know I've received advice, and I think this is a great idea, is to add a welcome video or images. Now, I put my welcome video in my announcement, so I don't worry about putting a video on my welcome page. but I've seen instructors who do that. Sometimes instructors will also put a picture of themselves so the students know who their teacher is. Again, for me, I've got the video, so hopefully they know who I am. Um, and yeah, let me see. What do I have my next? I need to look at my thing. Any comments or questions on the homepage? This is like the equivalent of the first visit to the classroom. Thank you, Jacqueline. You love the adorable unicorn. Yeah.
I have a general question for you, Greg.
Yeah, go ahead.
How much of the course are they able to see off the get-go? Or how much do you release as time goes by as they complete the first, second, third assignment?
Yeah, great question. I make everything visible to students. So inside Canvas, everything is published. But I do have my modules. I typically have my modules date released. So I mentioned my content modules are 2 weeks long, right? So week one, they have the orientation module. At the beginning of week two, content module one is released, and at the beginning of week four, content module two is released, so on and so forth. So that's typically what I do. Uh, this past summer, for the first time, I made everything available from the beginning because I was teaching an 8-week class and I had a lot of material, and summer is the summer. So I wanted my students to be able to, access the content at a pace that would basically fit their schedules better. And I have some things inside my modules, right, where they have to complete certain things before they can access the next module. So I did this for the first time this past summer, is let them go through at their own pace, more or less. The only true deadlines I have for assignments, because I allow late assignments, is this, the first Tuesday, right? They have to do these things to stay enrolled. And then, of course, the very last day of the class is the last day for assignments that are doing. I'm actually trying that again for the first time this fall. So I'm going to have a full semester of, everything open, but they have to progress. They have to look at every single item on the module, and many of the items they have to do something before they can progress.
So you
Matthew shared.
don't find those release conditions, they
Yeah.
haven't been a problem for you?
They have been a problem for my students, but there's an easy way to see if students have met the release conditions because there's a modules progress bar button. And so I can, like, if a student says, oh, I can't do a thing, then the first thing I'll do is I'll look at the module progress and I'll say, oh, the reason you can't do that thing is you haven't yet looked at the textbook chapters. You haven't yet looked at the recorded lectures. As you do those things, you'll be able to access, right, the quiz, for example. That has come up before. And I will take a screenshot of their module, their individual progress, and I'll say, look, this screenshot shows you where you need to go next. Alex, I have a question.
Yeah, Greg, can you check to see if they watched the intro video like we have in Insights in Canvas when we post the lectures, we can see how much of the lectures they've seen or they watched. Can you do that with your intro as well as you put it into the announcement?
Yes, I can. Thanks for asking that. It's an excellent question. And that is only available if you use the Studio plugin in Canvas. So this video here is a studio video. And this is from my summer class. So if I go to the studio link, I'll see if I can do this without violating anyone's FERPA rights. So I click on the studio link, right? Because I use Studio, which is Canvas's video management tool. Studio tracks everyone's, how many times they've clicked, blah, blah, blah. So if I go to that welcome message, nope.
I think it was on top of page 1.
Oh, was it? Okay. Thank you. Here we go. Welcome to History 310. So if I click on the video, and I'm going to click on this button that says Insights, and I'm going to try not to show you any students' names. And if I do, you can send the FERPA police to my office, and I'll make sure I clean that up before I do the recording. And if I go slowly down, I know I can do this without. Here we go. So this was my summer Welcome to History, that video that you just showed, that I just showed you, right? 10 of my six of my students watched it. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
And if I were to scroll down, I'm not going to do this, but if I were to scroll down, I could see who those 6 students were. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, Teresa, you know, if you ever feel the need to be humbled, look at your studio access data. Okay. So this was first visit to the classroom. Yeah, and I had this on the screen there, right? The things to include: a friendly welcome, how to get started, where to get help. That's some crucial information for students. All right, let's take a look at the next topic, which is how do you get to know your online students? And I've got another poll, but I think I saw a hand raised first, or did the hand get lowered?
Yeah, no, I had a question for you.
Okay.
Do you recommend the videos that I've created are on YouTube and unlisted, but they get them from the a link in their modules? Would you recommend me uploading them, all of them, to Studio so that I can see that?
Um, I, I think there's a yes and no. Yes, I think that's an easy yes to say. The reason I would hesitate is for me, how I assess did my students actually watch the videos? I don't look at the video accounts at all. I assess that through their activities, right? I have discussions where my students are comparing interpretations of the past, so they're getting that from the textbook and from the lectures. I have, you know, when they do their writing and their research assignments, they can cite the lectures as the video as a source. So that's where I assess whether they've actually watched it. Do I care that my students are skipping videos? I can't control that really, and I don't think it's worth it for me to go chasing down that type of, you know, that type of. To me, it's an exercise in futility. I'd rather focus on the, you know, creating engaging assessments and activities where they are showing that they've learned, that they've, you know, they've processed whatever. If they end up skipping some of the videos, that's they will. What I've done also is I take those data, right? So you saw me show that screen, and I actually have a spreadsheet where at the end of the semester I will go and and when I have the time, I will write down the minutes and the view counts, right, for every one of the videos. And then I can do a comparison because I can tell if my students, right, are more interested in a particular topic maybe versus another. Maybe if I did this long enough and I looked hard enough, I might say, you know what, that lecture that I did on the material culture of colonial America, boy, that does not get a lot of views. So maybe I might, you know, switch up how I present that particular topic, right? So that's a way that I can use that data. It's impossible to get that data from YouTube because the YouTube, even for unlisted, right? If you look at your YouTube view counts, then some of those will be yours, right? Because you're watching your YouTube videos probably. It's also probable that your YouTube, those counts are going to build up over time. So you won't necessarily know, right, which semester, which students are doing that. What's also coming, and you'll be hearing about this in September I mean, I'll share the news, is YouTube and Studio, their relationship is changing because YouTube is changing how ads are displayed. And right now, if you embed a YouTube video in Canvas, like not in Studio, or maybe in Studio too, you'll see ads. I think maybe it's not in Studio, you'll see ads, but there's a YouTube for education video player that's going to be integrated with Studio. And what's really nice about that is that the what I've heard is that the YouTube captions will become Studio captions. So what I would do basically is not do that right now. I would wait. And then once you see that announcement, that information comes out, there should be a way to easily basically keep your videos on YouTube and then use the Studio Video Player to kind of capture those data. And then I'll say one more thing about that. I personally put all my videos on YouTube in addition to putting them in Studio, like the ones that I make, not my weekly videos, but my content videos, because that's my YouTube account and I own it and no one can take it away from me. And we have a Studio license, and I'm confident we'll have a Studio license as long as we have Canvas because they're so closely interrelated. But that is a separate license cost, and it's therefore possible that those two licenses might be separated, and we may lose access to Studio. I don't think that'll happen, but I also like to prepare just in case. And again, if there are videos on my YouTube channel, if I ever end up teaching anywhere else, I can reuse those videos just as easily elsewhere. So thanks for asking that question. Okay. How do you get to know your students and how do you get to know your online students? This is also a Zoom poll. funny how I click a link and okay, here we go. Here's my question. You should see it there. First, information from students to multiple choice. Oh, yep, you're already answering. How do you get to know your online students? So I'm sorry, not multiple choices, multiple answers. Select all that apply. And I'm giving myself a time check. We are here until 1:45. Thank goodness it's not 1:15. All right, 30 total responses. Let's go ahead and end that poll and share the results. So here's what we've got. The most popular answer was introductions, discussion, or icebreaker. I think that is whether or not you use the discussions tool, some type of introduction activity, I think ought to be mandatory for a fully online class, help establish that sense of community among the students. We have to work extra hard to establish that community because our online students are online, right? And especially if it's asynchronous, we don't know where they are, what's surrounding them, or even when they are engaging with our class. 40% of the respondents said pre-course survey, 33% to get to know you assignments, and then of course through their assignment submissions, we are of course getting to know our students through that. Okay. So let me go ahead and say I will then talk you through and show you how I do this. And I do the introductions discussion, and I also do a pre-course survey. And then I'm going to connect this back in the next topic about how students get to know each other. So I do an introduction discussion, and learning about our students helps them feel comfortable, especially if they learn something about us too. So it's really important. So I've got this on the screen there is to however you prompt your students to introduce themselves to your class, it could be entirely about your subjects. It could be entirely personal. It could be entirely or a mix of those. It's really important to also answer those same questions. What I do, and I've been doing this for just a few semesters now, is I have an identity-based discussion where I ask students to share the parts of their cultural identity that they feel safe to share. This professor named George in sociology, he did some work on identity and education for his sociology PhD, so I'm indebted to him for sharing this idea. I also asked them to name their favorite performing artist. What I do is I share my answers to those questions in the prompt for the discussion. And so my students are seeing right away, they're seeing me model being vulnerable because I have some cultural identity that are challenged for me, that have been a challenge for me. And I want them to feel comfortable with being who they are and bringing their whole selves into our class because we can't separate our identity from who we are and especially how we learn. I want my students to feel safe and comfortable because a student who does not feel safe is a student that cannot learn. And so this is a really important part of that for me. And I've again been doing it for a few semesters. I really like the results, and I really am impressed with how many of my students, they don't all share really personal, they're not always vulnerable, of course, but a number of them are, and I really appreciate that they feel that they feel safe doing that. And again, I share my answer to that prompt with them because I want to model being vulnerable in front of strangers, and I'm trying to establish a sense of trust within our community. In my history classes, it is not that hard. And in fact, I think we ought to, in history, discuss really tough topics. We need to discuss human trauma. We need to discuss how crappily people have been treating each other throughout all time. And that will potentially bring up some really painful memories for students. So I want them to be in a space again where they feel comfortable engaging with the material. And also they feel comfortable speaking with me and connecting with me if they, if they need help. Okay. So that's one. So one of two. That's the identity discussion. And let me say a little. There's like a before and after this that I do as well. Before they do this discussion, we agree as a class on the community norms. I have a community norms activity where I give them a list of things like I will respect you. I will You know, I welcome you, whoever you are, however you are in this class. I will treat you with respect. I will make mistakes. I will feel uncomfortable and lean into my discomfort. I hope that you will, you know, be honest with who you are. I hope that you will share, you know, as much as you feel comfortable. I hope you will give grace to your classmates when they make mistakes. And then I ask them, what are your additions to this, right, to this community norm? So I did that before they do the introductions discussion. And then immediately after that, there's an optional reflection where I ask my students, hey, you know what? You just shared some of your identity. What did that feel like for you? Not every student responds to that. It's optional, but again, it gives them a space, right? So they can kind of share additionally. Maybe they don't feel comfortable sharing stuff with their classmates. It's in my experience, I have some students who feel more comfortable sharing stuff with me than with their classmates. And so that kind of helps, again, try to build this a safe space for them to feel comfortable to learn. So that's number one of two. How do I know about my students? Number two is I do a pre-course survey, and I've got 5 of the questions that I ask here, and I'll talk through each of these. So this gets back to who asked me this earlier. I want to make sure that yeah, Lisa, you asked this question. So these are the things that I include. Fully online asynchronous class, a 3-unit full semester, that should be 9 hours a week. So I ask my students straight up, all right, you got 9 hours a week you should be spending on this class. How are you going to do it? How will this fit into your class this semester? I tell them in my syllabus, it's also on my course homepage, that if they send me a response that I say, I will do my best